Hi everybody, I'm David Lloyd. I'm the General Manager of NVC in New Zealand, and this is Dr. Natalie Lloyd, my wife, who is the lead vet surgeon at Tasman Street Vet Centre and also the vet manager for NVC in New Zealand. We're both very sorry we couldn't be there with you today, but thanks for giving us an opportunity to talk to you. Mark Ward has asked us to do a brief overview of the corporate model in New Zealand for companion animal vet businesses. We're in a unique situation for us because we have owned our own independent practice for 11 years. Then we sold it to a corporate, and now we both work in support office roles for that corporate. So we're trying to keep it very generic today. We don't want to get too much into the NVC model per se, but we just want to give you an overview of what we found as the change happened a couple of years ago. So we owned a clinic in Tasman Street in Wellington, and it was the Tasman Street Vet Centre. It's an inner city companion animal practice that was formed about 50 years ago, and we sold it to NVC in 2016.
So here's a picture of our clinic. We were quite a small, obviously family run business. We had a strong community feel, and certainly when we were making some, I guess, considerations or having some considerations about what our plans were for the future, the idea of selling to a corporate wasn't on our radar. We didn't feel that our business would be a particularly great fit for the corporate models that we looked at. But equally, we were keen to make some changes. After being in the business for 11 years, we were looking for some opportunities. And we could see that the business environment was starting to change.
So really what happened was that we're looking to expand our business after running it together for 11 years, and it was going to cost us a lot of money to do that. We were looking at either rebuilding our existing premises or expanding to a new site or possibly buying other clinics as well. So part of the process for us was trying to get an idea of the value of our own independent clinic. And through that process, we started talking to several people in the market, and we sort of found a like-minded group in NVC who shared the same sort of training and standard of care philosophies that Natalie and I did. So when we looked at trying to take the business to the next level, we thought it was a good fit to actually sell up. So as I mentioned before, Natalie is now the lead vet surgeon at Tasman Street and stayed on in that role, and is also the New Zealand vet manager and on the vet advisory committee for NVC. I'm the general manager for New Zealand, so I manage the 10 NVC practices that are in Auckland, Wellington and Christchurch, and the practice managers and lead vets report to me in general, and also to Natalie from a vet manager perspective. So today we'll briefly just talk about what a corporate model looks like in general, and also just cover off what sort of considerations there are for independent clinics or even employee vets when they're thinking about joining a corporate group. The first thing I guess I'd say is that all corporates aren't the same. Generally speaking, they're structured in a similar way with a CEO at the top, possibly a board of directors, and then lead vets and practice managers and possibly regional managers in between those two. So the philosophies are quite different. Some corporates are very high involvement. NVC is one of those. We try and get in and help manage standards of care with clinics and give lots of support to practice managers and lead vets. There's a heavy training focus for some corporations, and that's certainly another NVC philosophy. So some corporates don't seem to want to do a lot of heavy involvement stuff, and that suits the vendors just fine. So the people that sell their clinics, if they're happy just to sell their clinic and cash up some money but be left alone, then that is a perfectly fine model for them. Some of the corporates you'll probably know have quite a heavy retail focus as well. That's part of their corporate strategy, I guess. And then others have varying decisions about rebranding. So for NVC, we don't rebrand our clinics. A lot of the goodwill's tied up in their local area with their own brand. Some other corporates see the value in trying to keep things a little bit more the same and well-known and more recognisable brands by having a single brand across their business. And the other thing too that is sort of developing. It's been around for a little while, but it's starting to ramp up now as a managed services model. So independent clinics that don't necessarily want to sell to a bigger group can subscribe to managed services. So a lot of the benefits of having a support office, marketing, business coaching, HR, and financial analysis stuff, you can access that without actually selling your own business, but just get some extra help.
So the main thing for us, and certainly, for the group that we're talking to, as far as whether you are looking for a job in a corporate environment or, down the line, if you've got your own business and you're looking to or considering selling, is to think about the things that are really important to you. We've got a few things that we're going to touch on. We've come up with these important factors really based on information that's come back to us through our business, as far as what is important to the vets that are employed by NVC, and these issues come up time and time again when we talk to vets about what's important. So certainly for me and for my vets and most of the vets that I talk to are standards of care. Working in a corporate environment means that standards of care are often set from above. David mentioned before that I've got a role on our vet advisory committee, and for me the thought of kind of letting go of control of what was happening in our clinic for standards of care was a bit scary. So I put my hand up to join that committee and have been able to kind of hopefully shape what the standards of care are across our business. But that can be a frustration, the thought of not actually being able to directly input or affect those standards of care can be a worry. Comes back to that corporate philosophy and making sure that what the business that you're a part of wants is something that aligns with your values. Certainly in a larger group, you've got a broad range of skill sets, so being able to provide a wide range of standards of care is very achievable. The standards of care are often measured, and I think that can be a little bit off-putting to some people, but the reality is I think a lot of vets absolutely know what they should be doing, but because of time constraints, maybe they aren't always doing that, and maybe the skill sets just aren't there, and that is something that can be highlighted by measuring those standards of care and just allows us to see where a clinic might need some extra help. One of the downsides of being part of a group is that you may have less supplier flexibility. Certainly corporate groups will have strategic alliances with some suppliers, and the role of the advisory committees in those businesses is to make sure that those suppliers are ones that kind of meet, both standards and also, product availability. But you may not be able to deal with, every single supplier out there that you would if you're an independent. So with equipment, that's obviously been a really important part of our business. For David and I, when it was our clinic, every time we were having to look at investing in something like digital or dental radiology, there was a significant cost factor. And for us, that was risk and there was some worries associated with that. Being part of a corporate group means that we have certainly better access to equipment offerings, and the costs sometimes can be a little bit, better for us. Certainly, as far as raising funds for equipment in a corporate, we need to do return on investments. So we need to put forward a business case to say that this piece of equipment is going to be useful and we are going to be able to generate some income out of it. And that is part of what then sets up the business to make that piece of equipment actually work for you. There is often a strategic plan within a corporate group. For example, providing good dental care is really important to National Vet Care. So when we're looking at spends on equipment, we might have a focus on one particular area at a time. One of the things I certainly have found with being part of a corporate group is that when we do invest in equipment, that there's much better knowledge sharing across the group. So actually making that piece of equipment, whether it's a dental generator or an ultrasound, we can kind of share knowledge around how to make that equipment work best for us, and how to troubleshoot when, maybe things aren't going well. So remuneration is dear to everybody's heart. We feel in the National Vet Care Group and in a corporate environment particularly that remuneration is usually well structured and quite transparent. So we have a remuneration process where you can see kind of what skill set nurses and vets will sit in. So you have a good idea of how you're going to kind of work through as you become more experienced, both the pay scales and the skill set levels. We do have a fairly structured review process. So twice a year we sit down with our employees and go through both the performance assessment, and as part of that we have a remuneration assessment as well. So things are quite structured, and that can have pros and cons. Certainly it's easy to kind of knock on the door of the vet who owns the clinic and an independent clinic and sit down and have a chat. And I think for some people a structured review process can be a little bit intimidating, but you know, the reality is it is really no different at Tasman Street now, that, you know, our staff come in and have a sit down with myself and our practice manager and look at what's happening. And I think certainly having the structure around needing to have our reviews done twice a year means that we are, you know, constantly kind of talking to our staff and assessing that. There's some other benefits that come with being part of a corporate group, and for me one of the huge ones is that we have access to an employee support scheme, and that is something which we have really enjoyed use of over the last few years, and has been, in my mind, a great add-on to our staff. We didn't have access to that before when we were an independent clinic. There are some other benefits, you know, within our group. Our staff can travel quite a bit, and also there are health insurance benefits as well. So support, mentoring and training, you know, particularly for those of you who are going to be out in the workforce pretty soon, it's important to know that you've got support there. Within our environment, there's quite a bit of networking. Sometimes it's formal, with, you know, supplier discussions, and, you know, CPD evenings. Sometimes conferences, and sometimes it's less so. You know, we do kind of get around the clinics quite a bit, and the staff get to talk to, you know, for example, other vets and other national vet care clinics, which might work slightly differently to the way Tasman Street does. There's internal training, obviously, and that happens in every clinic between the vets. And there is a little bit more flexibility. So Tasman Street is a very small clinic with a small group of, you know, highly motivated owners. We have a really strong medical focus, whereas the pet vet group, which is another one of our clinics in Wellington, is a big, busy referral clinic. So they have a much stronger surgical focus, and before vets that kind of came through Tasman Street didn't get, I don't feel they got the really good, well-rounded surgical training that they could have had, and now we can offer them, you know, better experiences with working, you know, across a few different clinics. If you end up in a clinic and you don't feel like you're getting support, or you don't feel like that mentoring is kind of what you want, then there is a structure that, you know, if you're not happy, there's somebody, you know, to complain to. We have an HR department, and we have processes to follow through on that. And then finally, as far as grad programs go, you know, within National Vet Care, the idea is that our grad program will allow our new graduates to get, as I said, just a really good, well-rounded training in a lot of different clinics and environments.
Competency framework, what that really means is that there's a career path and clear structure to everyone's job, whether you're a kennel hand, vet nurse, vet, regional manager, national manager, or the CEO. So everyone knows where they stand and what competencies they need to have or work on to move up the chain, I guess. And that also is reflected in the remuneration strategy too. So it's quite clear, and I think that provides some assurance to employees, particularly about knowing where they're at and how they compare to their colleagues and in the industry in general. The other thing, of course, is that you're exposed to a little bit more formal sort of business knowledge. I think a lot of practice managers or business managers for independent vets sometimes are ex-nurses or vets trying to do a lot of different things, and you learn on the fly. There's a little bit more formality around the training side and the business support side with a corporate. Obviously, there's a little bit of chance to travel. We've had vets that have moved overseas and working in an NVC clinic in Australia when they've moved over from Wellington. So that's quite good, and having that sort of network of clinics to call on, and you obviously can stay with the same employer is quite good. And also, you know, we have internal conferences and lots of internal training centres around the place that people can go across to either the Gold Coast or Melbourne, and soon to be Christchurch as well, to do training. One of the things about career progression though is if you're really entrepreneurial and you're looking at getting a job in a corporate, you might struggle a little bit to have some ownership there. That really depends on the corporate that you're either trying to work for, or if you own your own clinic, who you're going to sell to, about how you can do joint ventures. So this sort of demonstrates a very complicated looking, and it's a little bit small, sorry, but a career framework for NVC particularly. And what you can sort of make out there are those horizontal lines are the different grades, and the columns are different positions within the group. So basically what it says is that there's a career path. Even you know, casuals who might be doing some kennel attendant work can still work through competency frameworks and get more involved in the clinic and get more experience. And the other thing too is, if you're already running a vet clinic, or you're looking at selling or using a managed services provider, the things that you can access help with HR and recruitment, which is always a bit of a bugbear when you go around and talk to managers in different clinics. Marketing support. So at the moment, I think there's a pretty wide range of marketing going on in the vet industry. Some is really, really excellent, and some really needs some work or is almost non-existent. And then workplace health and safety is a massive one, and has been a growing concern for business owners and managers over the last few years. And the last thing really is financial benchmarking, and there's financial benchmarking services. NZVA run some throughout the year, and also some of our key suppliers, I think Zoetis do one as well. But with a corporate group, obviously that's all in-house, and it's pretty easy to just see how your clinic's performing from a financial point of view. So I guess what it looks like in the future, corporates are continuing to expand. There's a whole lot of reasons for that, and I think part of it is that there's not quite the same desire for people to run and own their own practices, possibly. The present group listening to this excluded, maybe. But also it's a sort of a seller's market at the moment. There's a few corporates competing to try and get market share. So it's not a bad time to consider selling well-run and profitable vet clinics. But also because of that, it's hard to buy into a well-run vet practice, because the corporates can offer reasonably high multiples. I don't think if we went back sort of 15 years and Natalie and I were looking at buying our own clinic, we could have easily afforded to buy it now. But we were lucky we got in when we did, and we worked quite hard to try and build that up. One of the other things that is a consideration for lots of people, and certainly for us with a kind of cozy sort of local clinic that we had, was client preference. And we were quite concerned that if we sold to a corporate, does it become this soulless, faceless clinic that no one knows anyone? 2 years later, I don't think that's a real concern. I think the same staff have been working in the clinic, client-facing. Our clients don't really notice any difference in the way the clinics run. Obviously, that's not the case for all clinics that sell to a corporate. That sometimes the rebranding happens, but largely people go to their local vet and they want to see the people, and it's not so much about who owns it in the main. So we don't see that has been a real problem. And then the last thing I'll just touch on briefly is that managed services solution. So I think the next year or two will see a massive rise in this service. There are some clinics that are a little bit small, or they don't want to sell to a corporation, but they want to access the deals that sort of big business gets. You know, there's sort of discounts and supplier arrangements and things that maybe corporations can access a bit easier. So managed services at the very lowest end would be sort of like a buying group type arrangement, but at the upper end it can go into marketing support and website hosting and newsletter production and business coaching and financial training and mini conferences and ongoing veterinary training and things like that. So that's going to be a subscription-based service that is out there already, and is available to people that they want to maybe get a taste of the corporate life without having to actually sell to a corporate. So I think that will be a massive change in the next year or two.
So finally, I guess our last points are that, as far as the future goes, whether you end up working in a corporate environment or, for an individual standalone clinic or in a vet group, what David and I, feel really strongly is that the ways that vets will succeed is to have a high level of, standard of care. We want vets to really understand their value. It is one of those things that I hear time and time again that vets say that they don't like talking about money in the consult room. And the reality is there is so much that we bring into that room that our clients really respect us for. We just have to understand that, we are providing a really valuable service. And that as long as you truly believe in that, then I think, everything else from a business perspective will come right. So thanks for your time. Sorry, again, we couldn't be there. Hopefully that is going to give you a little bit of an overview. Thanks.